Hi there. In this video we're going to have a look at the main components of an essay structure, what purposes each of these components serves, and how you can make sure you best achieve these purposes in your own essay writing. So if you're a bit confused about how to best go about structuring your own essays, then this video should prove really helpful. Getting the structuring of your essays right is incredibly important for two reasons. The first reason is that a good structure helps the reader to engage with and understand the contents of an essay. You might have noticed that all essays have the same macro structure. They all start with an introduction, have a middle section or a main body, and then end with a conclusion. The second reason is that a really good structure serves as, if you like, the skeletal framework of a narrative. And of course, a narrative is what distinguishes an essay from just a compilation of disparate chunks of information that happen to occur in the same document. To help you better understand how you go about structuring an essay, I'm going to set a hypothetical essay question. And then we're going to have a look at a sample introduction, extract from a main body of an essay, and a conclusion that address that particular essay question. And I'm going to point out the main features of each of these structural components and indicate how you can best achieve the key objectives of each of these structural components in your own essay writing. So here's the hypothetical essay question. Discuss how psychologists have theoretically attempted to explain prejudice. Now, don't worry if you don't know anything about psychology or don't understand theories of prejudice. It's absolutely fine. You don't need to. The purpose of having a hypothetical essay question is just to kind of illustrate some of the principles of good practice when it comes to creating introductions, main bodies, and conclusion sections. You might want to write this question down though, just so you have it to hand when we're discussing examples of each of the main components of essay structure. So let's have a look at the introduction section first. Now, it's really important that you get the introduction right because the introduction sets the tone and the direction for the rest of your essay. So if this is wrong, chances are the rest of your essay is going to be wrong too. Now, a good introduction has three critical objectives. The first objective is to establish a background context for your work. In other words, you need to tell the reader why the particular topic you're looking at in response to the essay title is important. You also need to provide the reader with any key definitions for the topic you're covering. The second key objective is that you need to narrow down the focus of your essay response. For any topic you happen to be covering, there's way too much information out there for you to do justice to it all, and that's why you have to narrow down the focus of your essay. The third key objective of a good introduction is to make sure you give the reader an indication of how you're going to tackle the particular essay title that you've been set. So let's have a look at how these work in practice. So let's work through an example together. Let's say that the text that now appears on your screen is an introduction in response to the essay question that we've just noted. What I'd like you to do is to look at this text and to ask yourself, does it meet the three key objectives of an introduction that we've just discussed? You might want to pause the video to give yourself time to read the text that's on the screen. So I think you'd agree with me that having looked at this introduction, there are a couple of problems with respect to the key objectives that a good introduction should achieve. And the first is that the author hasn't provided any kind of background to the topic. And the second problem is the author also hasn't explained to the reader how they're going to deal with a particular topic in the course of their essay. So what I'd invite you to do now is pause the video and read this version of an introduction and ask yourself the question, is this doing a better job of an introduction with respect to the three key objectives that a good introduction should be achieving? Just ignore the colouring of the text for now. I'll explain the significance of that shortly. So having read this version of the introduction, I'd hope you'd agree with me that this is a much better effort at an introduction section than the previous example you've just seen. And that's because the author of this introduction section has clearly made an effort to address all of the three key characteristics or features that one would expect of a good introduction section. In the yellow text, you can see that the author has provided a working definition of the topic that's being addressed in this particular essay. And they've also given the reader a couple of sentences by way of putting that topic into some kind of context and illustrating its importance. In the white text, you can see that the author has attempted to narrow down the focus of this particular essay and is indicating that the focus of the essay is going to be on some of the theories that have been used to account for prejudice. And in the orange text, you can see that the author has attempted to indicate to the reader how they are going to go about addressing this particular essay title. So let's turn our attention to the main body of your essay now. The main body of your essay needs to achieve 3 key objectives. The first objective is that at all times you must remain relevant to the particular essay title that you've been set. Now, I know that sounds really obvious, but it's actually incredibly easy to go off track or off topic when you're composing your essay. I'm going to put a link in the top right hand corner of the screen to another video that I've produced that provides you with a good amount of advice and guidance on keeping your essay composition relevant to the essay title. The second key feature of a main body of an essay is to systematically deal with the topic in the way that you said you were going to approach that topic in your introduction. You might remember that one of the key objectives of an introduction is to explain to the reader how you're going to approach a particular topic. Well, in the main body of your essay, you need to make sure that you're following that approach, and you do that via a sequence of paragraphs. The third key objective in producing a main body for your essay is to establish a narrative flow. And a narrative flow simply means that your paragraphs are all linked up in some fashion, and you're not just presenting a series of chunks of disparate information for the reader to figure out in their own time. The whole point of developing an essay is to produce an academic argument or academic discourse, and that means that your paragraphs have to link up in such a way that kind of tells a story. And the way you achieve this is to use something we call signposting. So let's have a look at how this all works in practice. Pause the video and have a look at this extract of text from the main body of an essay that's been written in response to our hypothetical essay title. How well do you think this text extract is meeting the key objectives of a good main body of an essay? Press play when you're ready to continue. Having looked at this particular extract of the main body of an essay, I hope it's clear to you that the problem here is a lack of narrative flow or continuity between the 2 paragraphs that appear on the screen. Each of these paragraphs is dealing with a different theoretical account of prejudice, but they've just been presented to the reader as disparate chunks of information. There's nothing here to link them or to move the narrative forward in any way. Pause the video and consider whether you think this is an improvement on the version you've seen previously. Press play when you're ready to continue. Hopefully you'd agree with me that just the addition of the yellow text has made the transition between these paragraphs much easier for the reader to follow. You can now see that these paragraphs don't just exist as 2 disparate chunks of text, but there is text that's been inserted to provide continuity or narrative flow. And the text that's been inserted is an example of what we would call signposting. So let's turn our attention to the conclusion section of an essay. Now, the most important thing to say about a conclusion section is that it shouldn't just be repeating what you've already said earlier on in the essay, because just reiterating what you've already said isn't really contributing anything to your composition. The key objective of a conclusion section is to synthesize or bring together the points you've made in your essay into an overall position or a take-home message in relation to the essay title. One trick you might want to use to prevent your conclusion sections from degenerating into just reiterating what's come before in your essay is to think about the issues or the arguments that may have emerged from you having written your essay. Don't go into detail about these, but it can be a good idea to mention them just so that your essay produces or generates other lines of inquiry. So let's have a look at how this works in practice. Pause the video and have a look at this conclusion section. Ask yourself, how well is this achieving the key objectives that should be being achieved by a good conclusion section? Press play when you're ready to continue. Hopefully you'd agree with me, having read this conclusion section, that it really doesn't add anything to the essay, and it certainly doesn't achieve the key objective of a good conclusion section, which is to bring together the contents of the essay and synthesize them into a take-home message with respect to the particular essay title that's been set. Pause the video and have a read of this revised conclusion section and ask yourself whether it's more effective in meeting the key objectives of a good conclusion section. Press play when you're ready to continue. Hopefully you'd agree that this version of a conclusion is far superior to the previous effort, and that's because the author has attempted to synthesize the contents of their essay into a take-home message for the reader, and you can see that in the white text. Additionally, the author has also taken the opportunity to point to areas of research or inquiry or discussion that have been raised by their essay that might merit examination in future work. Notice they haven't gone into any detail or introduced any new material at this point. They've just pointed out some areas that may merit further examination in future works. It's worth remembering that a well-structured essay doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't just emerge out of thin air. It's a product of careful thought and planning. And to this end, I'm going to put a link at the top of the screen to another video I've produced that gives advice on how you can plan your essays more effectively and ensure that you develop an academic discourse rather than just throw information at the reader.